In my youth, I grew up hearing my grandmother say, "Save for a rainy day." This phrase became a mantra in my adult life. I kept clothes that no longer fit, held on to presents I never used, accumulated pans just in case, and collected dozens of empty boxes for emergencies. My closet was so full that I had to push the doors just to close them. My house, which was meant to be my refuge, had turned into a storage depot for possibilities never realized. Everything changed when my daughter, concerned about my growing anxiety, gifted me a book about the Japanese perspective on minimalism. I remember looking at that simple cover and thinking, what nonsense. They don't understand the value of things. Reluctantly, I began reading it, simply to please her. I never imagined that those pages would completely transform my perspective on possession, space, and happiness. The Japanese have a unique relationship with objects and spaces that goes far beyond mere organization. For them, accumulation is not just an aesthetic matter, but represents an energetic blockage that directly affects our health, prosperity, and inner peace. It was as if that book was speaking directly to me about the problems I had been facing without realizing their cause. For years, I suffered from frequent headaches, insomnia, and an inexplicable feeling of suffocation. I consulted doctors, tried medications, but nothing fully resolved the issues. Ironically, the answer was piled up on every surface in my home. The Japanese concept of ma, the empty space between things, began to make sense to me. It wasn't just about having less, but about valuing the intervals, the silence, the absence. I began to realize that there was no ma in my life. There was no breathing room among my objects, my thoughts, or my days. When I began my journey of letting go, the first hours were almost traumatic. I picked up a shoebox I had stored for 7 years, for a future project. My hands trembled as I placed it in the disposal bag. I felt nauseous, a true physical reaction. It was as if I were abandoning a part of myself. This extreme response made me realize how unhealthy my relationship with objects had become. I discovered that in Japan there is a concept called motonai, which goes beyond the idea of not wasting. It means recognizing the intrinsic value of things and using them with reverence. Paradoxically, my habit of keeping everything was the true form of waste, objects left unused, losing their function and essence, while occupying physical and mental space. In the second week of my transformation, I found a box with 27 empty notebooks that I had been collecting. 27. For what? For when needed, echoed my grandmother's voice in my mind. But the truth is that in 5 years, I had used only 2 notebooks. The others remained, gathering dust and absorbing possibilities that never materialized. The Japanese method of ichigo ichi, the awareness that each moment is unique and will never be repeated, taught me something surprising. By accumulating objects for an uncertain future, I was missing the present. I was living based on hypothetical scenarios, neglecting the now, the only moment that truly exists. One afternoon, when I opened a drawer full of souvenirs from trips, I noticed another pattern. Those objects did not bring me vivid memories, as I had justified. In fact, I barely remembered where most of them came from. They were merely material anchors, giving me the false feeling that happy moments needed physical representations to remain real. The concept of tsukumogami, from Japanese mythology, began to make sense to me. According to this belief, objects that have existed for more than 100 years gain a soul and consciousness. Although it seems like a charming legend, it carries a deep truth. Our belongings absorb our energy, our thoughts, our emotions. An object kept out of obligation, guilt, or fear carries that heavy energy with it. Gradually, I noticed curious patterns. The corners of the house where I accumulated the most things were precisely the areas of my life that seemed stagnant. The office overflowing with papers and the impossibility of starting new projects. The kitchen cupboard bursting with utensils and my lack of culinary creativity. The chaotic wardrobe and my insecurity about my appearance. In the 6th month of my journey, something remarkable happened. After releasing more than 40% of my belongings, the headaches that had tormented me for years diminished drastically. I began to sleep better. My breathing became deeper. And curiously, new opportunities started to arise. A course invitation, an unexpected trip, a special reunion. The Japanese deeply understand the concept of stagnant energy. Feng Shui, which has its roots in China but was adapted by Japanese culture, teaches that accumulated objects block the flow of qi, vital energy. Observing my own experience, I cannot deny this correlation. When I freed up physical space, I created an opening for new energy flows in all dimensions of my life. One of the most surprising discoveries was realizing how accumulation affected my relationships. My husband, discreetly, avoided inviting friends over. My daughter rarely visited. And when asked, both admitted feeling suffocated by the excess of things. The accumulation affected not only my well-being but also created invisible barriers between me and the people I love. The Japanese concept of kodawari, the meticulous dedication and attention to every detail, taught me to value quality over quantity. Previously, I had 15 almost identical black blouses. Now I have 3, each with a specific purpose, made of materials I value and that truly serve me well. The result? Less time wasted deciding what to wear, less guilt for not using forgotten pieces, and more satisfaction with my choices. There is a Japanese ritual called oasuji, a deep cleaning traditionally performed at the end of the year. More than just a physical tidying, it represents an energetic and spiritual new beginning. I adopted practices inspired by this concept not only annually but as a continuous habit. For each object I evaluate, I ask, does this bring light to my life, or does it merely take up space? One of the most challenging areas for me was the kitchen. As someone who grew up in times of scarcity, I kept plastic containers as if they were gold. I had an entire drawer just with lids without containers and containers without lids. One day I'll need them, I kept repeating to myself. When I finally got rid of that excess, I discovered that cooking became more enjoyable. The free space brought creativity and experimentation. At 50, I realized that I had dedicated half my life to accumulating things that I now desperately needed to eliminate. The time I spent organizing, cleaning, searching, moving, and storing objects could have been invested in real experiences, genuine human connections, and self-development. The Japanese concept of ikigai, finding purpose and satisfaction in everyday life, revealed itself to be intimately connected to simplicity. The less I was distracted by possessions, the more clearly I saw what really mattered. My purpose was not hidden in drawers or shelves, but in the freedom to live each day fully. Accumulation is also directly linked to fear. During my process of letting go, I faced deep fears I hadn't even known existed. Fear of future scarcity. Fear of forgetting the past. Fear of wasting resources. Fear of disappointing those who gave me gifts. Every object kept just in case was a small monument to fear. When I got rid of items that belonged to my mother, I faced the most overwhelming guilt. How could I let go of something she had touched? Japanese wisdom helped me understand that the essence of the people we love does not reside in their objects. These items often become anchors that keep us tied to the past, preventing us from fully processing our grief. I also experienced a curious phenomenon. The more I donated, the more I received. Not necessarily in the form of new objects, but in opportunities, connections, and meaningful moments. It was as if the universe responded to my new empty space with possibilities that had no previous entry. The Japanese practice of ichinichi isho, living each day as if it were a whole life, means beginning and ending cycles constantly, without accumulating physical or emotional baggage. I began to apply this principle. I don't leave dishes for the next day, I don't accumulate a mountain of laundry, I don't postpone small maintenance tasks. The result was a sense of lightness and completion I had never experienced. Another fascinating aspect of Japanese philosophy is the appreciation of kintsugi, the art of repairing broken ceramics with gold, making them more valuable after being fixed. I applied this concept not only to objects but also to my own life. Failures, mistakes, and losses do not need to be hidden or compensated with material accumulation. They can be integrated into our story, making it richer and more authentic. Gradually, I discovered that my old habit of impulsive buying was linked to emotional voids I was trying to fill. Every new purchase brought a momentary excitement that soon faded, giving way to the need for another acquisition. It was a vicious cycle that drained not only my physical space but also my financial resources and my peace of mind. Japanese minimalism taught me about kanketsu, the simplicity and completeness that come from reducing to the essential. Unlike scarcity, marked by lack, simplicity is a conscious choice to value quality over quantity. I realized that I was not giving up anything valuable, just eliminating distractions to focus on what truly matters. The practice of Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, helped me reconnect with nature and observe how it functions without accumulation. Trees shed their leaves in the fall, animals use only what is necessary, and rivers flow constantly. Nature does not retain or accumulate beyond what is needed. Why do we, humans, develop such an unnatural behavior? One of the most transformative insights was understanding mono-no-aware, the bittersweet beauty of impermanence. Accumulation is, in essence, an attempt to deny the transient nature of life. By accepting that everything is temporary, our objects, our moments, ourselves, I was able to embrace a lighter, more conscious way of being. In my husband's office, there were boxes upon boxes of old documents that one day might be needed. When he finally agreed to digitize the essential and discard the rest, he discovered papers over 20 years old that had never been consulted. Those boxes represented only the illusion of control and security. My relationship with gifts also changed radically. I began to value experiences over objects, both when giving and receiving. When I receive a material item that doesn't fit into my life, I sincerely thank the giver and then find a new home for the item, without guilt. I learned that the true gift is the intention and affection, not the object itself. The concept of muda, any activity that consumes resources without adding value, made me question many habits. The time spent organizing unnecessary objects, cleaning surfaces covered in knickknacks, and searching for items amid the chaos was all muda. Eliminating the excess meant also eliminating purposeless tasks that drained my energy every day. Today, when I visit the homes of friends who struggle with accumulation, I clearly see the patterns. I see the stress in their eyes when they need to find something quickly. I notice how they constantly apologize for the mess, even when no one has mentioned it. I observe how they avoid certain areas of the house that have become dead zones, consumed by purposeless objects. One of the biggest fears I faced was regret. What if I need this later? Was a constant question. The Japanese practice of Zenkan, contemplative observation, helped me realize that in years of accumulation, I rarely needed something I had discarded. And on the few occasions it happened, I always found alternatives. The cost of storing hundreds of items, just in case, simply wasn't worth it. The deepest transformation occurred in my relationships. My husband and I rediscovered space in our home and in our lives. We began sharing hobbies that had once seemed impossible due to lack of space. My daughter started inviting friends over again, even offering to spend holidays at our home. Something unthinkable when every surface was covered with objects. There is a Japanese saying that goes, "True wealth is having little with a full heart." Previously, my house was filled with things, yet my heart often felt empty and unsatisfied. Today, with less than half of my former belongings, I experience an abundance that no material acquisition could ever provide. The concept of shibui, simple and subtle elegance, transformed my personal and domestic aesthetic. I learned to appreciate beauty in details, functionality, and authenticity. A single flower in a simple vase brings more joy than an artificial, dusty arrangement. An empty wall creates space for contemplation. A well-chosen piece of furniture replaces several mediocre items. In the last 2 years, I moved houses once. A process that would have been traumatic and costly before happened with surprising ease. Instead of dozens of boxes filled with items that would need to be reorganized, I had only the essentials, and each item had its defined place. That physical move reflected the mobility and adaptability I had achieved internally. I discovered that accumulation was directly linked to procrastination in my life. Stacks of books to read someday, fabrics for future projects, special ingredients for recipes I'll try. All of this created the illusion of potential without realization. By eliminating these physical reminders of incomplete projects, I opened up space to take action in the present. Wabi-sabi, the beauty of the imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete, liberated me from the pursuit of perfection that fueled my accumulation. I no longer needed perfect dinnerware to host guests, nor a complete wardrobe with options for every imaginable occasion. Real life happens in the imperfections, in the spaces between the ideal and the real. One of the greatest revelations was realizing how physical accumulation reflected mental accumulation. As I cleaned my closets, I was also clearing out old resentments, unnecessary worries, and outdated plans. Every object released seemed to take away a small weight from my mind. The nights of insomnia diminished, and the periods of anxiety became less frequent. I created a ritual inspired by the Japanese concept of saijaku, tranquility amid movement. Every morning before starting my day, I dedicate a few minutes to contemplate the spaces in my home, appreciating both the objects and the gaps between them. This practice helps me stay mindful and prevents me from reverting to old accumulation habits. I also discovered that accumulation was often a form of self-sabotage. As long as my house remained chaotic, I always had an excuse not to invite people over, not to start new projects, or not to change my patterns. The excess of objects was a physical barrier that created emotional and social barriers. Today, any new item that enters my home goes through a rigorous questioning. Does this truly add value to my life? Do I have a proper place to store it? Am I willing to care for this object for as long as it exists? If the answer is no to any of these questions, I gratefully acknowledge the opportunity and allow the item to find a more suitable home. The Japanese philosophy of kaizen, continuous improvement through small changes, has been my companion on this journey. I did not transform my relationship with objects overnight. It was small, daily steps and conscious decisions that gradually built a new reality. This same approach can work for anyone who wishes to free themselves from the burden of accumulation. At 53, I feel that I have finally learned the lesson that the Japanese instinctively understand. True wealth is not in what we possess, but in the freedom we experience when our belongings serve life instead of life serving our possessions. Every empty space in my home now represents a possibility, a breath, an opportunity for something new and meaningful to blossom. If you, like me, feel the weight of accumulation sucking away your energy and bringing unhappiness, I invite you to take the first step. It doesn't have to be a radical transformation. Start with a drawer, a shelf, a surface. Notice how you feel as you release that small space. Notice the energy that circulates where there once was stagnation. And gradually, allow that feeling of lightness to expand into other areas of your home and your life. Japanese wisdom teaches us that emptiness is not absence, it is possibility. When we free up physical space, we create capacity for experiences, connections, and growth. Like a cup that can only be filled when it is empty, our lives can only receive new blessings when they are not congested with excess. I look at my house now, spacious, organized, breathable, and I see a reflection of the person I have become. Every object has meaning, purpose, and beauty. Every empty space brings tranquility and potential. And the misfortune and unhappiness that once seemed to haunt me have gradually been replaced by clarity, purpose, and a serene joy that no material possession could ever provide. This is the true treasure I discovered in Japanese wisdom. We do not need to accumulate happiness. We just need to remove the obstacles that prevent us from fully experiencing it, here and now.